Now to bring in our State House insiders, Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, John Parker, our Republican strategist tonight. All right, let's talk about the primary runoff is happening next week. We had a debate between the two gubernatorial candidates on the Republican side. John, did any one candidate separate him or herself from the group there?
Well, unsurprisingly, Alan Wilson had a very good night. There was a lot of energy and enthusiasm for both of the candidates on the debate stage. But it would seem, looking at the polls and the momentum coming out of the debate, that it was a good night for Alan Wilson. Lieutenant Governor Evett held her own. There had been speculation whether she'd make it to the debate. She'd only gone to one of the debates previously. And she hung in there. There were some fireworks, but I think most would say Alan Wilson won the night.
I tend to agree with my good friend John Park on that. Look, when you step into the big leagues, you have to make certain that you're prepared to play in the big leagues. She did not look as if or prepared to play in prime time. I think most of us see now why she has avoided debates up to this point. When I say she, meaning our lieutenant governor. And I thought Alan had some crisp gubernatorial responses, particularly the response to the South Carolina state questions. You don't reference students as mobs who are exercising the right to peacefully protest, particularly when conservatives have always prided themselves on that issue. At the end of the day, I think that it's going to be a very highly contested general election with the Democratic nominee, Jermaine Johnson. I look forward to the marketplace of ideas continuing taking place. We've seen so far the early voting numbers, a little over 36,000 people have participated. Not a huge number, but nevertheless, I think a steady number.
And Antoine, you mentioned those numbers. How hard is it to get folks to the polls, again, just 2 weeks after a big buildup to a primary race?
Well, it's never easy, but in this political environment, I think a lot of people are experiencing political exhaustion, political frustration, and a lot of people, there's some in the Republican Party, at least some of my friends, feel like they may not feel connected to either one of the campaigns, so they're just going to wait for the nominee to emerge. The one thing I give John Parker and the Republicans credit for, they tend to treat these primaries like WWE wrestling. They fight it out in the ring, and then they go in the locker room and gel together against the Democratic nominee. I hope that my party would take that lesson and we find ourselves gelling together, because it's not, the primary is the point where you make a choice. The general election, you're given a choice.
And John, how hard is it to get people back to those polls on Tuesday?
It can be a challenge. Now, this one, I expect more people. There's a lot of energy and excitement around it. That said, runoffs are turnout elections. They are not about persuasion. And so both campaigns are working aggressively to turn out their voters. You see with the fireworks at the debate and the bloodiness of runoff elections, as one side attacks the other side as lying or throwing out name calling and all of those type things, as it gets bloodier, that does tend to turn off voters and can discourage them from going to the polls. Most of the time, voters want to hear solutions and inspirations to motivate them to get out and vote for their candidate. And as the gloves come off and the fists start flying, people become more discouraged. That said, we do see a lot of enthusiasm out there. We see that with just 2 days of early voting and normally almost 40,000 people already turning out to vote, that we are looking at a high turnout runoff primary.
You know, one interesting thing about this primary race, and this could be the case for both sides when this is all said and done. Clearly, the lieutenant governor, I think, would have outraised General Wilson in this contest. And if he were to prevail, that means the candidate who raised and spent the less money, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, would have ended up prevailing to be the nominee. That's like one big picture observation. Two, we find two Trump-endorsed candidates who are fighting for dear political life in these primaries. If you look at what happened in Georgia, the Trump-endorsed candidate in the gubernatorial race did not come across the finish line first. There's been talk that the president may co-endorse both candidates. Who knows what that actually means? I've never heard of that. But it could mean that South Carolina Republican voters do not see themselves in the way that Donald Trump may think they see him. And we saw that play out in the redistricting battle as well. So there's a sense of independence, if you will, to some degree with Republican voters in our state.
You mentioned the president there, Antoine. John, there was something on social media earlier this week, some speculation that the president might say, well, you know what, I'm going to endorse both Evitt and Wilson in this race. That way he's going to win either way. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, there's been speculation, and certainly I have heard that there is real consideration of that. Ultimately, both the lieutenant governor and the attorney general are big supporters of President Trump. And as Antoine alluded to earlier, at the end of the day, while we have these fights within the Republican Party, that is a healthy part of the process, we are unified around a common message of bringing conservative values and helping develop a thriving economy just both for the state and for the nation, addressing issues like affordability. And so at the end of the day, both the lieutenant governor and the attorney general, Alan Wilson and Pam Evitt, support President Trump, and President Trump very well may support both of them.
And I love my friend John Parker talking about affordability, because you know why? Republicans have been in charge of our state for over 2 decades now. So if there's any blame to be placed in the discussion, whatever your legislative issues may be or whatever your issues may be in South Carolina, lay them squarely at the feet of Republicans who control the House, the Senate, and every single one of our constitutional officers, and who've chosen not to do a damn thing about the skyrocketing prices of gas, goods, services that are necessities for everyday South Carolinians to not only live, but to survive.
Thankfully, the voters have longer memories than Antoine wants to give them credit for. Remember that where the inflation came from that we're wrestling with, and they also know that South Carolina is a state that people are flocking to live here due to a thriving economy that is outpacing most of the nation. And it's part of that is due to the Republican leadership as they flee from the liberal bastions of California and New York and come to greener territory here in South Carolina.
All right, John Parker, Antoine Seawright, guys, as always, thank you so very much for your time. A quick break.